Have you ever been, absolutely sure about who's going to win something big, like a high-stakes election, and then bam, a totally different result happens, and you're just left thinking, wait, how? How did that happen?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling.
Yeah.
It cuts across so many areas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially when the decisions get made behind closed doors, like in some of these really old institutions.
Yeah.
There's always more going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. And that feeling, that question, is right where we're headed for you today. We're doing a deep dive into why Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, people often called him the Asian Francis. Huge charisma, massive global appeal. Why wasn't he elected Pope? Not in 2013, and not again in 2022.
Yeah, it's a great question. Because Tagle, I mean, for anyone who doesn't know him well, he really is quite a figure. Powerful speaker from the Philippines, seems genuinely humble, but also just has this way of connecting with people, a real beacon for the reformers in the church.
Seen as a bridge, right, between East and West.
Very much so. A rock star of the church is a phrase you heard a lot.
So, okay, our mission here is to kind of peel back those layers. We want to unpack the politics, the theology, maybe even the more subtle stuff behind why this incredibly popular figure hasn't, made it to the very top job yet. We've got the articles, the notes you shared, so let's try and navigate this.
Sounds good. So just to build that picture of Tagle a bit more, his journey, it's quite something. He led the Archdiocese of Manila first. I mean, that's a massive, massive archdiocese.
Yeah.
And then he gets promoted, brought into the Vatican to head up the Congregation for Evangelization. Now, that is a huge deal.
Right. What does that body actually do?
Well, it basically oversees the church's global missionary work, its outreach all over the world. So putting him in charge there, it really cemented his status as this dynamic global leader. People were genuinely whispering, is this the next John Paul II?
Wow. Okay, so with that kind of profile, let's look at 2013. The conclave, right after Pope Benedict XVI resigned, which was historic in itself. The church back then, it was facing some serious headwinds, wasn't it? Scandals, bureaucracy issues, faith declining in some places.
Definitely. It was a crisis period, no doubt. So the cardinals, they were looking for a reform. But, and this is key, they were also looking for someone with real experience.
Okay, so where did Tagle fit in? He was charismatic, a reformer, but experience.
Well, here's the thing. He was only 55, which is remarkably young for a papal contender.
Very young, yeah.
And despite all the buzz, he'd only actually been a cardinal for about 4 months before that 2013 conclave.
Oh, wow. Only 4 months. That's not long at all in Vatican terms.
Not at all. So many of the electors and the cardinals voting, they felt he just hadn't had enough time inside the Vatican machine, the Curia. They felt he needed maybe a bit more seasoning, a bit more time to understand how everything worked from the inside.
Right, navigating that complex bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Okay, so if Tagle was maybe seen as a bit too new, despite the charisma, what made Cardinal Bergoglio or Pope Francis the right fit then? Was it just the Curia time or something else?
It was, I think, a combination. You had Latin America really rising as this vibrant center of Catholicism. Bergoglio, coming from Argentina, obviously represented that. He was also seen as a reformer, like Tagle, yes. But crucially, he had seniority. He had years of experience running a major archdiocese and navigating church structures. He ticked more boxes, you could say.
So kind of the reformer they wanted, but with the perceived safer pair of hands because of the experience factor.
Exactly. And there's maybe another subtle point, too. The church doesn't often pick popes who are seen as being cut from the exact same cloth back to back.
Right.
Some perceive Tagle's style, his reformist bent, as maybe too similar to what Bergoglio also represented. They wanted a change, but maybe not that specific echo right away.
Interesting. Okay, so that paints a picture of 2013. But let's fast forward then. Nearly a decade later, 2022 is notionally on the horizon. Pope Francis is getting older. Tagle is definitely not the newcomer anymore, is he?
Not at all. By this point, he's a proper Vatican heavyweight. He's been in Rome running that major department. For many observers this time, it really did feel like, okay, now is Tagle's time, surely.
But so, it didn't happen. Or at least the consensus didn't seem to form around him again. Why not this time? What were the hurdles?
Well, again, it seems to be a mix of things. Geopolitically, the mood might have shifted.
Yeah.
After Francis's papacy, which was very dynamic, sometimes quite disruptive.
Challenging.
Yeah, challenging. Some reports suggest many electors were actually looking for more stability this time. Maybe not another radical reformer pushing things quite so hard, but someone to sort of consolidate.
Okay, a desire for a different kind of leadership after Francis. What else?
Then you had, you had rumors.
Yeah.
Whispers started going around about Cardinal Tagle potentially having some undisclosed health issues.
Oh, really? That old trick. Were they ever confirmed?
No, they were later denied, quite strongly. But you know how these things work, especially in that kind of environment. The whispers themselves can do damage. Perception can become reality, even if it's based on nothing solid. The damage might have already been done, as they say.
Right, mud sticks, even if it's thrown unfairly. So, stability, health rumors. Anything else stopping the Asian Francises this time?
There was also pushback, definitely, from more conservative groups within the Curia, within the Vatican bureaucracy.
Ah, the internal politics.
Exactly. They were reportedly worried about what they saw as his liberal leanings. They pointed to things like his stance on, say, climate change activism or his approach to dialogue with China. These things made some factions quite nervous.
So ideological resistance, too. It's getting complicated.
And then you just can't ignore the sheer weight of history and geography, European dominance.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. It feels like a huge factor still.
It really is. I mean, think about it. In the last 500 years, there have only been 3 non-European popes. 3.
That's incredible, isn't it? When you think how global the church actually is now.
It's striking. So that pull towards a European candidate, especially maybe when stability is desired, it's still very, very strong. Tradition, geography, it all plays a part.
Okay. So despite all this, despite not getting the top job yet, anyway, Cardinal Tagle is still a major player, right? He hasn't just faded away.
Oh, absolutely not. He remains incredibly influential. He's a key advisor to Pope Francis, very involved in pushing this idea of synodality.
Explain synodality quickly for us.
Sure. It's basically a concept Pope Francis is really pushing, emphasizing more inclusivity, more listening, broader participation from everyone, lay people, priests, bishops, and the church's decision-making processes. Tagle is right at the heart of promoting that vision.
So he's still shaping the church's direction, even without being Pope.
Definitely. His impact is undeniable.
Which brings us to the big question, I suppose. Could it still happen? Could Cardinal Tagle still become Pope one day? What do you think?
Well, it's certainly possible. He's still relatively young in church terms, but looking ahead, the next conclave, it's very possible, maybe even probable, that the cardinals might lean towards someone perceived as more conservative, perhaps, after Francis's very reform-focused papacy.
A swing back the other way?
Could be. So Tagle's chances, they really hinge on which way the church decides to go next. Does it continue down this path of reform and synodality that Francis and Tagle champion? Or does it decide to sort of pull back towards more traditional ways? His fate is tied to that larger direction.
But whatever happens in the future, his legacy seems pretty solid already.
I'd say so, yes. Regardless of whether he ever wears the white cassock, he's already widely seen as this transformative figure. The man who almost changed history, as some have put it. He's influenced the conversation, influenced the direction profoundly.
So wrapping this up then, we've seen this really complex mix, haven't we? Youth, perceived inexperience early on, then geopolitical shifts, those damaging health rumors, ideological fights, the weight of European tradition, all swirling around one incredibly gifted individual.
It really highlights how many different currents shape these moments.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with maybe a final thought to chew on. When you look at all this, the personal qualities, the political wins, the sheer timing of history, what really decides who gets to lead a global institution like the Catholic Church? Was Cardinal Tagle, in the end, maybe too young, then too bold later? Or was it just, unlucky timing, something to ponder?